Margaret Patterson had been married to Robert for 32 years. They'd built a life together in their quiet suburban neighborhood, raised 2 daughters, paid off their mortgage, and settled into what she thought was a comfortable rhythm of companionship. At T61, Margaret still found joy in the simple things. She loved tending her rose garden, having coffee with her neighbor Linda, and yes, keeping things tidy. Robert always teased her about it, calling her his clean queen, with that familiar grin she'd fallen for decades ago. One Saturday morning in late spring, Margaret decided to surprise Robert by detailing his beloved Buick. He'd been working extra hours at the accounting firm, preparing for tax season, and she wanted to do something nice for him. Something that said, "I see you. I appreciate you." She gathered her supplies: the microfiber cloths, the upholstery cleaner, the vacuum. The morning sun felt warm on her shoulders as she opened the passenger door and began pulling out the floor mats. That's when she saw it, wedged beneath the passenger seat, partially hidden but unmistakable, a small tube with elegant script lettering. Margaret's hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. Not the lubricant for his squeaky office chair he'd mentioned. This was different, personal, intimate. Her mind went completely blank for a moment, then began racing. She sat down heavily on the driveway, the tube clutched in her hand, feeling the world tilt sideways. 32 years, 2 daughters, a lifetime of shared meals, shared dreams, shared beds. Margaret took a deep breath, then another. She thought about confronting Robert immediately, imagined his face, the explanations or denials that might come. But something made her pause. Perhaps it was pride. Perhaps it was the need to maintain some control in a moment when everything felt out of control. She stood up slowly, brushed off her jeans, and walked to the garage. Her eyes scanned the shelves until she found what she was looking for: the industrial-strength adhesive Robert used for his woodworking projects, the kind that bonded permanently within minutes. Margaret's hands were steady now. She carefully applied the glue exactly where the tube had been, then placed it back, positioning it precisely as she'd found it. She finished cleaning the car, every surface gleaming, every corner vacuumed. When Robert came home that evening, she kissed his cheek and asked about his day, just as she always did. 3 days later, she heard it. First, Robert's yelp from the garage, then cursing, then an edge of panic in his voice as he called out to her. Margaret walked calmly to the garage, drying her hands on a dish towel. Robert was bent over beside the car, his face flushed, tugging at something beneath the seat. His eyes met hers, wide with a mixture of pain and guilt and fear. "Meg, I need help. Something's stuck and my hand is." She looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him. This man she'd shared her entire adult life with, the father of her children, the person who'd held her hand through her mother's funeral and celebrated every small victory alongside her. "I found it when I cleaned your car, Robert," she said quietly. 3 days ago. His face went pale. The struggle with the glued tube ceased as the full weight of the situation settled over him. "Meg, please, I can explain. The neighbors probably heard you yelling," she continued, her voice still calm but with an undercurrent of steel. "Linda's probably already called 911. She does that, you know. Always worried about everyone." And indeed, within minutes, they heard the sirens. The paramedics were professional and discreet, though Margaret caught the younger one trying to hide a smile when he understood the situation. They had to cut the tube free, destroying the evidence of Robert's betrayal in the process, though the glue remained stubbornly attached to his palm. After they left, Robert and Margaret sat at their kitchen table, the same table where they'd helped their daughters with homework, where they'd planned vacations, where they'd shared thousands of meals. "Her name is Jennifer," Robert said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "From the office. It's been 6 months. Meg, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how it started. I felt invisible, I suppose. Getting older, feeling like I'd become just routine." Margaret listened. She didn't interrupt. She let him pour it all out: the excitement of being noticed, the texts, the lies, the hotel rooms during his supposed late nights at work. When he finished, she spoke. 32 years, Robert. We've had good ones and hard ones. I've watched you become gray, Watched your face change, your body change, and I loved you through all of it. Not because you stayed exciting or new, but because love isn't about that. It's about choosing someone every single day, especially when things feel routine. Tears streamed down Robert's face. I know. God, Meg, I know. I've ruined everything. You've broken something, she corrected. Gently. Whether it's ruined depends on what happens next. They sat in silence for a while. I don't know if I can forgive this, Margaret said eventually. I don't know if I want to, but I also don't know yet if I want to throw away 3 decades over 6 months of your weakness. I need time, and you need to decide what you really want. Robert nodded, wiping his eyes with his unglued hand. I'll stay with Linda for a few weeks, Margaret continued. You'll tell the girls the truth, all of it, and you'll end things with Jennifer today, not tomorrow. Today. If you want any chance at rebuilding what you've broken, that's where it starts. Robert moved to their bedroom immediately, and Margaret heard his voice through the door, quiet and pained. Making the call, Linda welcomed Margaret with open arms and sweet tea, asking no questions until Margaret was ready to talk. And when she finally did, late that night on Linda's back porch under a blanket of stars, the words came with tears, anger and grief and betrayal, and, surprisingly, a tiny seed of something that might have been relief. I feel like I can breathe, Margaret admitted. Isn't that strange? My marriage is falling apart, and part of me feels like… Linda squeezed her hand. Maybe because you're not pretending anymore. Maybe because you did something about it instead of just suffering in silence. The weeks that followed were difficult. The girls came home, Sarah from Boston, Emma from Chicago, and there were tears and hard conversations. Robert moved into the guest room, giving Margaret space while attending counseling sessions alone and then, eventually, together with her. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Margaret didn't wake up one morning and decide everything was forgiven. But slowly, painfully, they began to talk about what had gone wrong, what they'd stopped saying to each other, what they'd stopped seeing in each other. Robert retired early from the firm. They started taking walks together each evening, discovering their neighborhood and each other. He began helping with her rose garden, learning which varieties needed extra care and which thrived on neglect. One evening, 6 months after the incident, they sat together on their porch swing, watching the sun set in shades of orange and pink. I still think about it, Margaret said softly. The glue. Sometimes I'm proud of myself. Sometimes I'm ashamed that I could be that calculating. Robert looked at his palm, where a faint mark still remained. I deserved it. Maybe I needed it, something physical to match the damage I'd done to us. We both lost ourselves somewhere, Margaret said. You in someone else's attention. Me in routines and expectations. Maybe we needed to break apart to remember how to fit together. Robert took her hand carefully, gently, as if afraid she might pull away. She didn't. I love you, Meg. I never stopped, even when I was too foolish to show it. Margaret leaned her head against his shoulder. I love you too, but it's a different love now. Scarred, maybe, but also stronger in ways I didn't. No love could be strong. They sat together as the stars emerged. Two people who'd chosen each other once at 29, and were now choosing each other again at 61, wiser, wounded, but willing to try. And in Margaret's garden, the roses bloomed despite the scars on their stems, beautiful and resilient, thorns and all.